Welcome back to the Campfire, the real Campfire. I am so excited to have my good friend Angus Light here with me. Angus and I met in my first year of living in London. He was one of the nicest, kindest, warmest people that entered my world, and I've been chatting with you ever since. And one of the coolest things is just learning about your company over the past 3.5 years. And we're going to dive into all of that greatness now. And I can't wait for everyone else to hear about what you're doing, how you're changing the conversation, and really bringing nature to the table. So tell us a little bit about why production. How did you get into this?
Well, firstly, thanks, Shelly, for asking me to come out here. And yeah, lovely to be around a campfire out in nature.
Oh my God, yeah.
Chatting. Don't need much more in life, do we?
No. Marshmallows.
So yeah, why production? I just fell into it, really. I was working in London back in the late 90s and got asked to see if I wanted to be a runner at a location company in Soho in 1998. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and it sounded pretty cool, going around finding locations for shoots.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so bad.
And didn't realise that there were people that got paid to do that back then. So that's how I got into it. Slowly sort of, developed some experience, location scouting and managing, started to do some production, getting out on shoots, and set up Locate Productions back in 2005.
But it wasn't just you.
No, there were two of us, one of the co-founders, and we were out location finding, producing here in the UK and abroad. So we thought we'd sort of pool resources, hire a broom cupboard in Battersea and give it a go.
Wow. Okay. So how did that go from doing location scouting to then having a production company? I mean, location scouting is just like a piece of production.
Well, we were working a lot with photographers, directors who were heavily involved in location shooting. So it was a natural mix with effectively going off and finding these locations in wherever in the world and then bolting on the production and taking it on. So it just sort of
went from there.
Yeah.
And then how did people start to find you? I mean, you're the new kid on the block. They know you through like location scouting, but they don't really know that you're doing the bigger production stuff now.
Yeah. So back then it was a mix of both. And lots of photographers were booking us for producing the bigger jobs, and then we'd bring in location scouts, and slowly the business has grown, and we're very much now production with some location scouting involved.
I love the flip. So let's talk about the DNA that makes Locate what it is today, right? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and the company clearly has evolved, as you just mentioned. And so walk us through, what is the mission of Locate today, and where was that shift?
So today we're effectively a service production company, a production company working with photographers, directors, brands and agencies. We do a lot of international work. So we work with US clients coming to shoot in Europe, in UK, and UK becomes a bit of a gateway to Europe. So that's sort of the world we want to be in. And then we want to be in that world where actually, if we can be working for brands that have purpose embedded into them, where the campaigns are linked to impact, to messaging, that's like the holy grail.
Yeah. So I know sustainability and why we're here today is a big part of what's kind of baked into what you do. Like, I remember bidding that job with you that was already 2 years ago, or maybe even longer. And like, one of the line items in the bid was, to minimize like our carbon footprint and to give back to nature and plant trees. And I know that at least twice a year, you guys are going out doing rewilding. Has that always been part of Locate's mission?
It wasn't at the start. It wasn't like we were anti it, but from the start, you're just building a business, you're paying the bills, you're getting the jobs to the door, you want to keep the clients sweet. I actually grew up in a commune in mid Wales in the 70s and 80s. So I've been aware for a long time that there are parts of the mainstream advertising industry fueling unsustainable consumption that isn't right. And we generally could, we knew there were issues around it. So our sort of first sort of aim was to, how do we look at minimizing the footprint of the work we're doing? And it definitely wasn't from the start. It was a sort of bit of a slow burner. but it was 2018. IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, effectively announced that we had until 2030. Serious changes needed to happen, otherwise we'd have, serious climate change. And we thought, okay, hold on, we need to be doing something here. At that point, Ad Green had got some momentum and had been launched, and that was a good motivator to see other people doing it. So we signed up to them. We then did some carbon literacy training with Albert, which is the UK BAFTA's sustainability arm.
Right, the film side.
Carbon literacy training is a really great way of getting your team on board on that journey. I would advise it to anybody, any business out there, whether it's free or not, but that's a really good sort of place to start. And then it sort of went from there, really.
I think that's really interesting, right? That literacy piece. Can you talk to me about your team? Obviously, it just started with the two of you, and now you're a much bigger team. And how do you embed that into the culture when, like, you're bringing new people on, and how do you sustain that with them so that it's rote with them when they're talking with clients, when you're doing bids, when you're working with other creatives who maybe don't have the same literacy?
I think so. There's the carbon literacy training really helps get things started, but I think most people in our industry are aware of the issues that exist. And I think most people are wanting to do something. They're wanting to engage in that. It's not a hard sell to get your team engaged in this. It requires providing them with the tools to be able to implement that way of working. It can be challenging to put certain measures in place, encouraging lift sharing or vegetarian menus when you're going to get pushback. But the guys understand the reasons to it. And actually, staff retention is good. It actually really is a positive element of how to develop a business.
So speaking of Ad Green, this is something you've been involved with for a while now, and you helped with the calculator. Do you want to talk to us about what that carbon calculator does and how it works and how others could start using it?
Yeah. So it's an industry. So the Ad Green carbon calculator is a morphed version from Albert, the BAFTA version, and is the go-to tool for the advertising production supply chain to measure and ideally then reduce CO2 emissions. So when you set up a job, when you get a production job in, you can then start to plan that shoot, and the education, the information you get from using it, you start to think, okay, how can we reduce our emissions? And it makes you aware of what the big hitting items are. So if we can remove flying from the advertising industry, we reduce the emissions of the industry by half overnight.
That's crazy.
65% of CO2 emissions from 2025, from all the reports carried out, 65% of emissions were from flying. So let's just start there. Plastic water bottles doesn't really make a difference, but let's have a chat about flying. How do we embed remote shooting techniques? How do we give clients and ad agencies the confidence to embark on a long haul train journey down into Spain or Italy rather than flying? Does everybody need to fly? What's local crewing like? These are the big conversations that we need to be having at the start of a production process. And we have a fly at last resort policy at Locate. Sometimes you need to go. You're going to a place you had never been before, working with a new team, quite a tricky shoot, quite a lot to manage. Then a Locate producer might need to travel. Do we work with local fixers on the ground in these countries instead? Trusted networks. It's a shift. It's a real mind shift we need to be working towards.
Well, speaking of mind shift, let's talk about B Corp, right? So sustainability baked in from the beginning, but then you want to take it up at a level. You want to take it up a notch. You really want to commit to all of the things, and now Locate as a B Corp, which means that you get that certification, but then you have to keep kind of improving on that. So what does that look like from a process standpoint for a creative group like you?
Yeah. So I suppose for those that aren't familiar with what B Corp is, effectively it's a means of trying to measure the success of a business outside of purely financial return. We have a finite planet. in order to live sustainably, we need the private sector, the private businesses to be aligned to that. And if people's success investment is only measured by a financial target, by a financial return, then there is no hope for metrics like society or the planet to get the voice they need. So B Corp measure success of businesses based on people, planet, and profit. Profit's there. We're not charities. We are
Right.
profitable, limited businesses, but we balance our activity alongside social responsibility and environmental management. I came across the B Corp movement at a Purpose Disruptors event, and I was like, yes, that's exactly it. I didn't really want to move away from the industry. I enjoy what I do. I love making the work. I love the people I work with. Is there a way we could remodel a business that would make me feel comfortable staying within the industry? And the B Corp movement gives us that platform. We got certification last year on the old standards. The standards have changed this year, but effectively it's quite rigorous measurement around environmental management and reporting, governance, social responsibility. And the big areas for us in our industry, in the service industry we are, that we're working for clients and brands, is that there are restrictions on what industries you're able to work in.
That's interesting. So how does that affect the business?
So yeah, there's a commitment not to work for the fossil fuel sector. You're not able to do gambling, or no more than 1% of revenue can be for the gambling sector. Aren't able to do any work for tobacco sector. We'd already made a commitment not to work for the fossil fuel industry.
Before B Corp.
Before B Corp. So that's been part of our mission and part of who we are for like 4 or 5 years now. We've also made a commitment not to work for the air travel industry due to the high polluting nature of flying. We appreciate that flying is necessary at times. It is needed. But we don't believe we should be advertising effectively business class flying. It's a high polluting activity. Should we really be, if we're not supposed to be doing it for our work, should we really be actually advertising people do it then? So it just felt like just didn't feel comfortable. So those are the challenges, because I think we've got to be, accept that it's going to hit revenue. It is going to.
Yeah.
And the challenge is to fill those income gaps with the new work, with the work you want to be doing.
So, I mean, how much of your portfolio was really fossil fuel or airlines before making the commitment to not have them?
Not enough that we'd go out of business by doing it. Yeah.
Okay.
There is that. You've got to weigh
Right.
that up. Yeah. But we work in a really unstable industry. We don't have retained work.
Yeah.
It's project by project. Some agencies are going to bring us work that we really want to be doing, as well as, it's not, we're third tier, we're feeding into other businesses ahead of the brand. So we don't know, I don't know the figures as to what proportion, but a manageable amount. You're probably looking between 1 to 10%. One year we did a big job for Shell. I was personally uncomfortable at doing it, but one of our freelance producers needed the work and wanted to do it. And I was like, yeah, I mean,
you got to pay bills. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to pay the mortgage, we've got to feed the family. And can I deny a freelancer the access to that income? Not really. It's a tricky moral one. I think deciding what work to take on isn't a simple ethics and values decision. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let's not do it. It's in the context of if you can afford to or not.
Right.
It's in the context of, how much do you need it?
Yeah. So, I mean, where is that going in the future, right? If there's, if it's no fossil fuels, no airline, are you still looking at doing gas consuming cars?
Yeah, automotive, non-electric automotive is controversial. That's sort of next commitment in line. I think fast food, fast food meat sector, fast fashion, luxury cruises. There's a sort of group of high polluting work that's called out by organisations like Clean Creatives, Advertising, Ad-Free Cities, Creators for Climate. The network, there's a network of organisations that are trying to redesign the ad industry, and we'd love to. Certain banks are quite controversial with their level of investments in
fossil fuels and airlines and things like that.
It's not simple, is it?
Yeah. How deep does it go?
And also, actually, there is an argument to say you can do a lot of good with that income One argument we've had is, do we take the job on because we need it to be financially secure? But then any surplus profit after that quarter or that period, you then donate or use to create work for the non-profit organisations that are desperately needing to challenge that sector.
That's interesting.
It's a way of balancing it up. You've got a short-term decision versus a long-term mission.
Right, which I know you have been looking at figuring out, like, how do you balance one to give to the other? And you touched on fast fashion there for a minute, and I want to bring us to something you recently did, which is that you were just at Paris Fashion Week, and you sat on this very interesting panel. Can you tell us a little bit about why you were at Paris Fashion Week when Loki doesn't really do a whole lot of fashion work, one, and two, it's an interesting panel for you to be on.
Yeah, I had to work out what trainers I was going to wear. Definitely not my world. Interestingly, we got the gig through Le Book Connections, which was where we met you originally. Aurélien invited us to take part in a panel around sustainability. That's an example of us using our time, resources and work to try and make change from within. I went out there with some guys from the Full Circle Creative, which is a network of businesses, agencies, strategists who are trying to come together as a community of businesses around sustainability. And we're invited to talk about what changes can be made. It was really interesting, actually. We're quite bold with the conversations, started to challenge profit as a metric to just be chasing, consumption, single use.
Yeah.
Like, these are big issues, conversations we need to be having. We need to be switching to a circular economy and circular design. And I was really proud to go out there and talk to a new audience.
I think it's interesting because there's been rules that have been changed for London Fashion Week around circular design and sustainability. They will no longer do shows for one-off fashion anymore. And a certain percentage of the clothing that is going down the runways at London Fashion Week has to be recycled. Now, who knows if that will be adopted through other, big fashion weeks around the world, but it is something like I've been paying attention to because I think, to your point about fast fashion, reusability, and what are the brands that are putting that stuff out there? How are they taking responsibility for that consumption is a very interesting topic to dive into.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an elephant in the room, I think, in our industry. But also, is it an opportunity? And I think that's where our industry, that's where our skills as image makers, storytellers, photographers, live action content creators have got, I think there's an exciting future there. But how do we tell the stories of the challenger brands, the new world of circular design, reuse, recycle? Purpose-driven brands, yeah. That all needs to be told and sold. We need to sell a different way of living. There are very few industries that can do that. Our industry is one.
Right.
It's like we need to use our talents, our skills and our expertise to effectively create a different culture of desire.
And I think this goes to kind of what you did with Purpose Disruptors.
The Agency for Nature campaign.
Agency for Nature campaign, right.
The Purpose Disruptors are an incredible organisation. When I came across them, it was like hallelujah moments. Like, do I leave the industry? Do I stay in it? Could I be using my skills for good? I think we've all had that. And they were there in a pub, round the table. Everybody had the same feeling. Really good at your job. But the better you were at the job, the more damage you're doing.
Right.
That's a really difficult thing to grasp, huh?
Well, I mean, for those that don't know Purpose Disruptors, the people who started it were in advertising and are still technically in advertising. And they had this kind of aha moment, right? That, the more we're good at our job, the more stuff we're selling to people. And most of that they don't need. And how do we change that conversation?
And they've produced a number of amazing initiatives, changed the brief to help creative teams in agencies think of alternative concepts. So when you're producing an ad campaign, you use that ad to promote a sustainable lifestyle. Good Life 2030. So how do we create this future that we want? And then this project Agency for Nature last year was like, amazing brief. Research shows there's a big drop-off in nature connectedness with 12 to 30-year-olds.
Interesting.
UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in Europe. So this was a philanthropic-funded project working with 5 leading creative agencies in London, who all donated a creative team to produce 5 national ad campaigns to rebrand nature to young people.
What a concept.
The client was nature. We had £5,000 per campaign to produce it. The creative ideas were amazing. It was like a fully collaborative project. We came together, we had a briefing session together. Production were involved from the start. And we worked with various youth cultures and youth sort of cultural genres, from drag artists, the drag community, goth community, Sunday league football, streetwear and fashion, and then there was an AI and tech one. The game changer were the media partners they got. So Meta were the social partner. JC donated over 200 billboard sites. Pearl and Dean donated airtime in cinemas for the TV commercial. ITV donated airtime during the FA Cup 4th round weekend for the TVC. And then We Transfer took some of the stills as well. So like amazing exposure, reached 25, 30 million people.
Wow.
Lovely work, beautiful work. And I think that's where, for me, it lands. The creative brief still has to hold itself. This isn't just about purpose. This is about the quality of the work out there. That needs to be front and center, and the purpose and the story and the message behind it is what backs it up in a way. But the work was wicked. Yeah, we recorded a bird show. We recorded a DJ music show in a bird hide or gothic disco. So we took a DJ Freya beer out into a nature reserve in North London with a nature conservation influencer volunteer, Lyra Valencia, and they recorded an hour's radio show looking at these birds in the lake. We went up to Derby, produced some social content, and took these footballers foraging around the park. They found nettle seeds to make a pie. The pie was cooked at the end of the football match. Proper lads. They're just out playing footy on a Sunday. Properly bought into it. A streetwear campaign that aligned with the nature cycles. So rather than, a new trainer dropping or a shirt, an item dropping, it was all around nature drops. So branded as a streetwear brand, but actually it was around the tulips and the crocuses, stuff like that. And then there was there was this AI tech around the talking tree. So these guys had developed this, Droga 5 had developed this tech that effectively creates the opportunity to have a conversation with a tree. Pretty nuts.
I mean, it
Very
sounds like
cool.
Lord of the Rings.
Cool. Yeah.
If anybody was a fan of the Ents, they were talking trees. I mean, then you could just imagine yourself being Frodo.
It was amazing. Really good. And just a really good example of how our industry, the talents in it, can come together to produce such amazing work.
So what do you think came out of that? Yes, there was a lot of touch points and a lot of views and amazing talent and really incredible collaboration. I mean, the breadth of people who came out and the level of people who came out. But what do you think the ripple effect of that is?
There was something that was so refreshing to me was actually the collaborative process that was involved. And it showed how inefficient our industry is, with it being so competitive. What was produced on such limited resources showed what can be achieved if we come together, as opposed to work in such competitive in our own silos. That was a bit of an eye-opener for me. The other ripple effects, what is the impact? Where does it go? The campaign got into South by Southwest in Austin. The UN development program team out there saw it, invited myself and Lisa from the Purpose Disruptors out to Cannes Lions last year to talk about the work, because these organizations are having a big challenge in branding sustainability. It's like just landing, it hasn't landed right.
Right. Or it's deemed like greenwashing.
Yeah, there's a greenwashing thing, which has been an issue in the industry, but I think also broader than that, it's like, how do you make it cool? Sustainability is just a pretty shit word. climate change, net zero.
Right. They're all very dire.
Footprint is like, who really cares about that, So how do we rethink the storytelling, the narrative about normalizing nature, the importance of spending time in nature, and how do we change our lifestyles to embrace it, to be part of it? So nature becomes a bigger part of our lives. 84% of people in the UK live in cities and towns. That's an issue. Huge amount of research showing the mental health benefits of spending time in nature. And I love the fact that we've come out here to record this podcast out in nature.
We've got Tim at the fire with us now. And what's so fun about Tim is that this is his campground, and not just his site, but the whole campground is yours. And one of the fun things we learned when we came to Scout was that you used to be in advertising, which is so interesting. And the two of you had this great conversation, and I kind of just stood back and watched the magic happen, all these sparks flying between the two of you with all this great overlap between the media business. And I'm so just curious, how do you go from building your media company that did luxury goods to this, to being in nature and starting a campsite? Like what? Like what? I just my mind's kind of a little bit at a loss. So tell us about what you did in advertising.
Well, we used to run a media business, and so we did a lot of planning and buying of advertising campaigns for clients, primarily in the premium and luxury goods sector. And we also did quite a lot of market research. So understanding those consumers and why they did what they did, and helping advertisers to break them up a bit, and so they could talk more intelligently to them.
So you did a lot of segmentation before segmentation was cool.
Yeah, we commissioned a couple of quite big surveys called Premium Knowledge, and it was all about understanding the different groups you got within the luxury goods sector.
And then how long did you do that before you realized you wanted something else?
I ran the business with my colleague Tristan for probably 13 years. And I just started thinking, life is very short. You want to do something you want to do. And I'd done a degree in agriculture, and I'd focused on organic farming. It was done at Aberystwyth University, which is not far from where Angus grew up. So for me, getting back out into the countryside was a big deal. We'd moved here before we sold our business. I was commuting, and I was thinking, I've got 3 daughters, and every day I wave goodbye to them as I go off on my scooter. And then I come home and they're in bed. So actually, you sort of look at it and think, well, actually, is there any point to that? Of course there is, but there's a lot of opportunity as well to do something different.
So then what was the epiphany of this space, finding this space, getting back to kind of what you studied, and how did you go from that world, which I would assume was a pretty good paycheck at the time, to taking that leap and being like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure it out?
Well, we'd already moved here, so I was still working in the media industry and commuting every day. We sold the business, and I just really got to the point where I thought, now's the good time to do it. Family, the big drive was family and doing something that, I really wanted to do. And it was pretty easy, really. It was sort of, you wake up one day and think, yeah, I think go for it, do it.
I'll buy a campsite. I'll buy a campground.
No, it was a garden. So what this place was a garden centre before. So it had some planning permission for the buildings, and it was a relatively straightforward proposition. We spent a bit of time working out what we were going to do with this garden centre, and we ran it for 2 years as a garden centre, and then decided that wasn't really delivering anything. The buildings were falling down. We're in the middle of nowhere. There's not many customers. So we parked it and then scratched our heads for a little bit of time, and then came up with the idea of camping. I spoke to a few friends locally. And when we were talking about the camping, I mean, originally it was going to be an edible campsite, and we planted the whole site with native edible plants. So there's a lot of edible plants around the site that we put in, orchard trees and herbs and things, and a lot of plants you could forage. But actually, most of the people who were coming here weren't really that interested. What they wanted was a space to just get away, put the technology down, start to connect with each other, and probably to connect with the natural world. And we've been landscaping this site, so everything around here has all been created. We're not really rewilded, and you mentioned about rewilding once before, but this is managed. This is a managed space, but it's managed for wildlife. And it's a big deal, because if you rewilded it, pictures would disappear because the thorns would grow. And so it's actively managed, but in a way that enables a lot of people to come and have a complete change of their life just for a few days.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you wanted to come here.
Yeah, it was, I think it was that, simply that Agency for Nature campaign. It's like, what is there that we do within our lives, our lifestyles, that actually could be done outside and outside of the towns and cities or in parks or just done differently? And like, why can't we record podcasts outside, surrounded by nature and beautiful oak trees above us and fire and listening to birds, and like, why not? Why can't we go to outdoor supper clubs in nature rather than just in restaurants? That the music festival scene in the UK is pretty well established. It's, Glastonbury, and you could argue that's a very, very visible example of how much people love just going out and doing something outside rather than just in clubs and,
right.
and venues. And yeah, the more you can make it accessible, help people find it, normalize it, I feel like is, just a pretty positive move. I love it. But by far the best way for me to switch off is two: camping for a weekend or going up to the allotment and gardening and just up there, growing some veg, doing my thing, no screens. I find it, it's very, very difficult to switch off in that way and be in a building. You're still charging your phone. It's still some sort of, you've got to boil a plastic kettle. This is wicked. This is lovely.
So how transferable do you think your skills were from your advertising days of like doing market research on people and storytelling and like bringing awareness to what it is that you're doing here?
And I think they're very transferable. So, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I used, I think, was listening. It was just listening to people. And if you listen to people, be it clients, be it the consumers, they give you all the answers. You sound like a psychologist, but, actually, there is a great opportunity if you just listen to people, if you trust people as well. I always think that there's so much mistrust. And actually, if you say to people, yeah, you tell me, you do that job, you're probably better at it than me, so you do it. And I don't need to look over your shoulder. So for me, listening to people, trusting people, and keeping a big focus, what you're trying to do. And because I think when you focus on stuff, exciting things can happen. So for me, understanding the customers, understanding the landscape we're trying to create, they were exactly the same things we were doing in our job in advertising. And that could be any job. It doesn't have to be just advertising. It could be anything. Engineers, teaching.
So you mentioned like listening to like the land, your neighbors. And so there's something that's special that's happening here, speaking about land and things coming back to the land. So one of the reasons we're here this time of year is the nightingales. And I remember when you also walked us around, you talked about the glowworms are back, which is kind of a new fun thing. And so the wildlife that wasn't here and giving the land permission to kind of be regenerative, even though you're managing it and you're listening in that way. Like, what do you think like the psychological feeling is that either you have and also that you see your campers have come here, being able to experience that stuff that was like never here before?
Well, I can't take any credit for the nightingales because the nightingales live on the railway track the dismantled railway track. I think it's that opportunity that people get to hear something. A lot of people will arrive here, not because there's nightingales. They arrive because they want to just get away for a few days. But when you get the chance to talk with them and you listen to what they're interested in, suddenly their eyes light up when they realize they're in a space where, I don't know if you've heard it today, but there's cuckoos calling. There's nightingales singing. We've got, in a few weeks' time, the whole site will be alive with marbled whites. And so if you can give people that story, and that's the storytelling part, which makes an experience so much more memorable, is if you can make that, real to people and you can explain to them what actually they are getting. Because most people wouldn't know what a nightingale sounds like. They wouldn't know how to find a glowworm. The glowworms were here, but it's a bit like having a party and there's a whole load of people waiting outside wanting to come to your party and they're not invited in because you've got the average campsite. It's just a cut grass. It's like a housing estate in a field. And what you end up with is all the wildlife is around the perimeter of it, living in, if there is any good habitat left around the edges. when you actually say to the wildlife, we're going to fill this place with the sort of habitat that you're going to want, it all comes in. And it's a really simple, it's a simple proposition, but we've kind of lost that. You know, our gardens are always kept so tidy. Everything in our life is ordered. And when you take the order out and make it a bit disorderly, the wildlife it really flourishes. And the people then start to hear it, they start to see it, and they start to connect with it. And for me, that's all that this is really.
I think this gets back to what we were talking about when you were saying, like, you know, you need the storytelling, you need to make it cool again, you need to make nature cool again. This is like exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting how do we appeal to a section of society who aren't you're sort of converted, I suppose, in terms of this. Those that are conservationists sign up to environmental organisations, who are members of Greenpeace or whatever. Actually, a larger chunk of society who still understand that nature is, you know, great, but aren't really engaging fully or significantly. How do we create opportunities and make a little bit more of a wild camping experience desirable? Like Tim's just said there about the marble whites, I reckon that's a butterfly.
It is a butterfly, yeah.
Cool. But I'd never heard of marble white butterfly before. And I'm like, oh, straight away. So he said the marble whites will be coming back soon. Should I then find out roughly when that might be, and then perhaps book a weekend here to come camping with my family? And then you start to think, oh, imagine that. Like, people start to then book their camping weekends, not just perhaps on, you know, whatever, it's a bank holiday weekend, but with nature. And certain events within nature would then attract different people. Perhaps butterflies here might attract a younger audience. Nightingales at night might attract an older audience who are able to stay up late and have the patience and the quiet. And that's like a really interesting concept that isn't really normal, is it? That's like quite a radical way of thinking about it. But the advertising industry could make that cool as shit straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You might get some sort of brand to be part of that, but like it doesn't take much to look into that world of. And then isn't it really interesting where we've been the Agency for Nature season 3 briefing session a few weeks back, and we're talking about someone coined the phrase toe dipping. We need to create opportunities where people can toe dip into nature, not fully step in because that's too much of a commitment, but actually these little tasters. And perhaps a camping weekend is something like that. Perhaps, going and playing sport in somewhere that's, you're going cycling up onto the downs is a way of starting to spend more time there, doing an activity that you're comfortable with. But your actual takeaway at the end of the day is, oh, wasn't that brilliant? Wasn't that peaceful? I've never seen that view before. Or the actual reward, the actual real essence of the experience is something more than just that initial activity.
Well, it makes me think of they're doing book reading now. Like they're doing book clubs in like Hyde Park, and they're doing it up in like, just in nature places where they're inviting you to bring your favorite book and a blanket and come like hang out and read for a few hours. So that would be very much an example of your toe dipping idea. But one of the things that I know we talked about with Angus was, Locate went for B Corp certification. And I know when we were here doing our walk around and you were telling us about like the building for the restrooms and the water intake and all of the great reuse of things here. And the secret campsite is going after B Corp certification.
Well, we probably will, but it's a really interesting space because a lot of our customers, Joe Public, and I don't know whether they see B Corporation as being an important part of what they want. But the interesting group, I think, is the businesses. And you're sort of talking about this, about making things cooler, but giving people the space to connect with each other. And when you're in a business, I think there's very often people work remotely. They don't see their colleagues. They don't spend any time together. And what's great is putting people in a situation where there's a completely blank canvas, very different to all going down the pub on a Friday after work, or all going for a meeting at a hotel or a conference, but getting people together in a totally, completely universal space, I think is a really great way of probably getting nature much more front of mind for a whole audience of people. So Yeah, I like the idea that, get people together in a different space and quite exciting things can happen. It's an amazing catalyst.
Yeah, we did the local Brighton and Sussex B Lab event for B Corp month in March at a wellness site, like an equine therapy site in Ditchling. And we went out, had a local rewilding charity in Brighton called Forests Without Frontiers come and help plant a hedgerow. So we went out, we planted a hedgerow, we planted a small coppice of trees that part of Tessa's site, as part of her vision to turn effectively a horse stables and a horse stud farm with fences into a vibrant space, nature, pond, hedges. Hedges are a really important aspect for biodiversity. They're called nature corridors. Didn't realise this until November, but the soil under hedges very rarely gets touched, sprayed or ploughed. They're really important corridors to allow nature to travel, to spread. I'm not a scientist. Let's just get that out there now, yeah? I'm definitely not a scientist. I'm just a producer in advertising and learning this as we go. Yeah, we did the planting in the afternoon. We got a really nice meal prepared by a chef called Gemma Ogston. Got the fire going, had a few beers in the evening. The weather was on our side. Let's be honest about that. Helps to have the weather on our side tonight. And it was wicked. Yeah, just a lovely, and people come back saying that was just the best networking event ever. And it just didn't feel like a networking event. It just broke down those sorts of, I don't know, feelings of chatting to, it's just a leveler of being able to meet and speak to people you never met before. Pretty simple.
Well, I was there for one of your rewilding events, and I remember the beers and the conversation afterwards, and it was definitely not a networking event. It was more about, wow, that was really fun. Look at all the things that we learned. There was so much that you walked away with and things that I had never heard about before, that, whether you picked up 20 things or you picked up one thing, you were left with a bit of curiosity when you went home on the train or drove home that night. So one of the funny things we were just chatting off camera about is the name of your campsite, the secret campsite, which shouldn't be secret because everybody should come. So how did that come to be?
Well, we spent a long time trying to work out what we were going to call it. And actually it just kept coming back, which is so much of the stuff here people don't know about. They don't know about wildlife. They don't know about the plants that we put in that have incredible edible qualities to them. And you start thinking as you go around, you think, well, it's a bit secret, isn't it? And so that's how it came about.
It
was simple.
I'd love for you to touch on a few of the really cool building things that you've done here, because I really enjoyed hearing about it when you walked us through. So can you tell us about the bathroom design and all the reuse that happened there and the construction bits that went into it? Because I think, to me, that was a big reveal of wow, that's really cool. I would never have thought you could do that.
Well, you can, and actually it's very easy to do if you speak to the guys I work with. They're called Local Works.
We can do the ad campaign for them if you want.
Well, they're based in Barkham, and I spoke to Ben and Loretta and said, I'm trying to do something that is a bit different for my wash house because we knew we were going to build one. Most people just come back with a standard proposition, which is sort of bricks and blah, blah. But they said, yeah, we can come up with something really good for this. We worked with this architect called Sean Ryder, which was rather ironic. But he came up with this idea, let's build something that uses no concrete. And so the wash house uses telegraph poles to hold it up. The floors are all made with one tree, which we use the whole of the tree. So the floorboards get narrower as you go higher up the tree. The roof's recycled. All the toilets flush with rainwater from an adjoining barn roof, which collects 330,000 litres of water every year, which would otherwise just disappear. So we really put a bit of effort into making sure that everything was kind of had some value to it. The shower surrounds are made from recycled roofing material. The shower trays are made from brick waste from Shelly Brickworks, which is about a mile away. And it's been great. People love it. The hard part is just trying to get that information across to everybody as they arrive. So we put up some signs that just explain, our thinking. We do a lot of recycling. We've got waste from, used to work with something called Compost Club, which was in Lewes, but they stopped working. And now we've just worked with the council and they collect all the food waste. So there's a lot of opportunities to do things that have a big impact. We've got a sewage treatment plant that's powered by solar, which heats all the hot water for all the showers as well. So it's not difficult. Costs a bit more, but I just look at it as a bit of an investment, really. It's about, one thing I understood from advertising was be really clear about what your brand is and deliver it at every point. And if we've got a proposition that is all about thinking about the future, then delivering that at every point. We've got space in there for wildlife. And my next project is to build a building that is all about wildlife. It delivers a commercial benefit, so it's a space where people can store or an office, but it's going to just be all about wildlife. So every single angle will have wildlife in it, because we forget about wildlife when we build buildings. It's starting to come back in, but I think it's a lot of opportunity.
I think you're absolutely right about forgetting about what happens when you build in nature and the ripple effect that it has. And I think we're seeing that with the mass amount of data centers being built right now and the pushback from the cities in which they want to build these data centers, to the exact point of you not only are affecting that little town that had nothing and they like being rural, to what's happening to the land, what's happening to the animals, what's happening to the biodiversity in that area. And we are seeing some resistance there if you're paying attention to the news, especially in there was a big article about southern Michigan and all of these data centers that are being planted there and how they don't want that because they don't want to lose what you've created here. Any thoughts on that?
I suppose, yeah, it's also coming here and having a weekend camping here is about not using that data. You're not using the energy, and actually opportunities for people to spend time away from their screens, away from the scrolling, away from the need for big data storages. And that's a big thing. I've got a young daughter growing up in this world, and creating space and opportunities for her to come and play and be with her friends where she isn't on her phone and she's not on a screen. That's a really big thing for me. And yeah, I suppose, campsites like this where buildings, the infrastructure has been designed in this way to help normalize that to young people as they grow up. And so it becomes part of their life. It doesn't become distant or unique or special or something. They actually become familiar with it. I grew up in a commune and a community in mid Wales on a converted slate quarry where this type of architecture, self-build design was being explored. It was like really early days, and that was just my normal. I just grew up as a hippie kid playing around it was just normal, wasn't it? I don't know any different. Didn't have a different childhood. So can we create those childhoods where we come out here? We've got a school camping weekend in July where all the parents of kids, and we're going out to another campsite in Sussex. That's great. Each summer they're going to have it's just going to be a normal thing. You go to a campsite and have a bit of a commitment this year to try and have a camping weekend once a month.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love this idea of, when I grew up, going outside was like normal. You got on your bikes, you went for a ride, you went down to the park or whatever. We owned a cabin up in the local San Bernardino Mountains in Southern California. So we were up there once a month playing, going for river walks. My brother and I would skip stones in the lake, things like that. And now I look at my friends and family who have younger kids, and it's all about, everyone's either on their screen at a sporting event, they're packed with things to do instead of remember when we just went outside and played? Remember when we went outside and garden with mom and dad and planted tomatoes or roses or whatever it is? So I think it is the time to kind of get people back outside.
Yeah, you did. Well, there's lots of opportunities for people to do this. And one of the things that happened with COVID was that a lot of campsites sprung up, but often a lot of them were quite rubbish, and they didn't really think they just capitalize on this huge audience of people who couldn't go abroad. But I think the fallout from that is that a lot more people have got outside, and I think there probably is an opportunity to try and create spaces where people can go. Talk to lots of people about whether there's ways we could do more of these. I don't know. It's a big opportunity. I think a really big opportunity. But the idea of getting people to start thinking about this stuff, because in this country, our wildlife is it's being totally pulverized. I don't know if you heard the cuckoo earlier today, but cuckoos are super rare now. There's parts of the country where they would have been really heard every year 10 years, 15 years ago, and now you won't hear a cuckoo. And there's so many species like that. We've got purple emperors over in the woods, in Nolan's Wood, which is just over there. They're the biggest butterfly in Britain, and they are amazing butterflies, but they're really rare. And they need willow and they need oak. And if they've got those things in abundance, then they'll flourish. But their numbers are really not great. They're kind of a bit of a, well, they're in decline. So it's a real shame when these house sparrows were in decline. They were a red listed species 2 years ago. And, you'd walk past a hedge when I was a child and you'd have heard loads and loads of sparrows in a hedge chattering away. And now they're a red list species. So we need the public to want this. Yeah. That's what we need.
I think that comes on to, so we're living in a climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, many crises. Fundamentally, it's a communication crisis, because these ways of living exist. The solutions to many of our problems exist. It's just making and embedding those within society, and that's largely communication. It's not the governments are limited in what influence they can have, but really, if we can pivot our industry, our sector, the skills that are within it, that's the exciting bit for me. That's where the advertising industry, the marketing communications industry, rather than selling more stuff that people don't need, are selling the exciting opportunity to go and witness some butterflies that they didn't know exist.
Or care about the butterflies, or care about the sparrows.
It's so often children will arrive and they, for the first, half an hour of their trip, they feel a bit lost because all of the things that they're used to, the phone or all of the items that they've got familiar in their lives, aren't suddenly with them, because there is no reception out here really. Then suddenly there's this period of time where it dawns on them that actually if they go and explore under those brambles there, they're going to see something. And they might, if they're lucky, they might get to see an adder here. If they go and explore, they'll see lizards. In the summer, they'll see glowworms. If they sit around at night, they'll hear bats, and we've got bat monitors we let people use. And all of a sudden, those things have a real magic to children. And children just need to be given the opportunity to see those things. And they are huge converts really quickly to it. So I'm very hopeful about the way that we do it, but we just need to get children introduced to this stuff. We run our little wildlife festival once a year, and it's an opportunity for kids to see all of these things. We set little mammal traps, we do camera traps, butterfly hunts, moth traps. It's an extraordinary thing. Do a dawn chorus work first thing in the morning with people at 5 a.m, and people who have never been for a dawn chorus walk, suddenly they're understanding why the first birds in the morning to sing are the ones with the biggest eyes, because they can see the predators that are going to get them if they are making a noise and singing loudly. The nightingales we got here at the moment, they can make a noise all through the night because they get themselves completely surrounded by thick scrub and nothing can get them when they're in there. But, if you're making a noise at night, owls, all sorts of predatory animals will get you. So, get people out and get them seeing it, and it sets them alight.
A project that we're involved with, which are also based in this, not far from here, over the fields, is a new company called Insure for Nature, where buildings and contents insurance profits go to nature restoration, nature recovery in your river catchment area. So the end game is that you then start to have a say in supporting this movement through a very simple transaction, a simple purchase that you do every year, that you don't have any agency over the profits of that insurance company. You have no control of what happens to it. And it's for us at Locate to get a brief like that, which is sort of links our world, our profession, to the world that Tim is in. And the success of Insure for Nature isn't the model. The model's amazing. There isn't a single person that I've explained how this works hasn't gone, oh, that's amazing. It's getting people to hear about it within an industry that's super competitive in the ad world in terms of home insurance. But it's just a really nice example of a solution-based initiative business that exists. Insure for Nature. Check them out. Log your details. They'll send you a quote. It's competitive. That's, part of this move, part of this future.
So, I think this kind of brings us back full circle in that we talked about listening, right? Like listening to people and what they want, and how do we bring that to them in a way that sparks curiosity right? Through like the children being like, oh, wait, I don't have my Nintendo Xbox in front of me. I can't play Fortnite on my phone. But all they need is that kind of little bit of transition time to get them curious. And you tell them little fun facts because kids love science facts. They love animal facts. You get them excited, which gets the parents excited. And if I can get excited over hedgerows, I think anybody can get excited. And then people start to see, if I'm excited about it, I'm going to go tell my friends about my experience, which then is my ripple effect out to my network, which then affects the next network down the road, which then hopefully then changes people's minds to be purpose-driven, which means that maybe I change my insurance company to be Insure for Nature, which then is a circular economy, which was what we talked about for fashion. So, I think it's a very interesting conversation around communication, listening, sparking curiosity and interest. And how do we do that through people that are used to selling widgets instead of selling something with purpose and, well, ultimately like mental health benefits. Angus, thank you for getting me out of the house and getting me by the fire, and for reminding us that one of the most radical things you can do is to toe dip into something new. Hey campers, here's the thing about Locate to remember. It started with 2 guys and a broom closet in Battersea, and then the mission came later, once they had the foundation secured. That's the order I care about too. Build the thing that pays the bills, and then build the thing that changes the world. If you're still in the figuring it all out stage, pricing, positioning, pitching, usage, and licensing, the Basecamp bundle is built for you. 4 courses, 1 price, built to get your business legs under you. And if you're past that and you're ready for the one-on-one kind of support, that dig into the weeds type of stuff, that would move Locate from a location scouting company to a B Corp sustainability production house, then check out Creative Sidekick. I work with you one-on-one for 3 to 6 months or longer to move the needle in your business to the next milestone and beyond. To find out more about Basecamp Bundle or Creative Sidekick, check the links in the show notes. All right, campers, that's it for now. Go plant something, go bird watching, go find your secret campsite. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, leave us a review. It does help bring more people to the fire. As always, continue the conversation with us over on Instagram, creativecamp.pro. Sign up for our bulletin to know the latest and greatest, where we also share tips and insights to what's going on inside our business. If you'd like just to support the show, you can buy us a coffee so we could take one on the road. We'll stoke the fire again real soon, but until then, keep creating, keep connecting, and I'll see you next time around the campfire.